The thing about difficult people is that everybody's a little difficult at times. You know, your blood sugar gets low, your caffeine content gets high, you start, or you're under stress, you start into your stress behaviors, which means you are yourself, only more so. And as the Quakers would say, kind of, I'm paraphrasing, everyone's a little difficult except me and thee. And even thee's a little difficult. But really, when I was researching this sermon and writing it, I had that freshman psych major thing of, oh, I'm that. Oh, I'm that one too. Oh, I'm that one too. You know, remember how when you were studying all the illnesses, you had every one of them. The overtalker is a difficult one, pretty common way of being difficult in the world, and especially difficult for people who are wired to get their thoughts in order before they speak. Now, many of us hear what we think when it comes out of our mouths. And that works well for some people, but other people actually like to think through what they're going to say ahead of time, and by the time they do, the talkers are all the way on to another part of the conversation, and their opportunity to contribute is gone. And when we're in a group with such a person, we look to the facilitator of that group or the boss of the team or whatever to say, thank you, let's hear from someone else who hasn't spoken yet. But sometimes the facilitator is not up to the task, and sometimes you just have to stay miserable, or you have to do as Dorothy did and say, I have something I'd like to say when you're done. Or if they're still not done, you have to go, let's let somebody else talk, which feels rude. But if they are keeping you against your will, they have been rude first. See what I'm saying? And the Buddhism tenet of non-harming comes into play here. We want to do no harm. That's what a good person decides. You want to do no harm, and part of that is doing no harm to others, and part of that is doing no harm to yourself. And if someone is stealing your time and attention and your goodwill, stealing it, they're taking more than has been offered. They're harming you, and you are harming them by allowing them to do this harmful thing. So, overtalking is a challenge. Now, sometimes you give signals, and the people don't understand your signals because maybe they're from a different culture with different signals. Now, this happened, I was in a small southern college, women's college. I was the chaplain. About every September, I'd have a couple of young women come into my office in tears. And they would go, my roommate hates me. I would say, your roommate hates you? It's just like 2 weeks. What gives you that idea that she hates you? Well, she never looks up and smiles when I come into the room. She won't talk to me. I ask her for help, but she won't help me. And she just is grumpy all the time. And finally, I learned a follow-up question. Where's she from, your roommate? Usually it was like, Massachusetts. Really, nothing wrong with the Massachusetts culture. It's just very different from the South Carolina culture, where the little chat is of utmost importance. You have the little chat in the grocery store checkout line. You have the little chat in the hardware store. You have you're stuck if you're in Yankee mode, which I'm half and half, so it could go either way. And you're in a line and somebody's like, how's your mama? Now, where's she going to church now? And you're just like, oh. But it's the little chat. And it's good to say hey to somebody when they come in the room. And if you really hate someone, then you go, hey. So like if you're at the junior league, you need earplugs because everybody's like, ah. And in the South, the way you ask for help is by going something like, oh, my, this is heavy. And then the other person's supposed to go, let me help you with that. But people from other cultures, the northern cultures didn't understand that. They just thought she was expressing that this thing was heavy. They didn't know she was asking for help. Now there's such a difference. I used to give classes in Welcome to Southern Culture. Because in the South, you ask somebody if they want something, and you're supposed to say no the first time. So manners dictate, you say, can I get you some tea? You say, no, I couldn't. No, really, I insist. No, I couldn't. Okay. If you let it go at 2 times of offering, then you didn't want to get them tea in the first place. And they understand that, and you're just doing a little manners dance. But if you really want to get them tea, then you ask the 3rd time, and then they go, oh, that would be delightful. Everybody knows, except someone from outside the culture. If you're from like California or North Dakota, you might not know that. It doesn't mean you're rude or difficult. It just means you have different cultural signals. So when you're in that sense that maybe you're having different signals, they're not reading yours or whatever, it's good to address it directly, which is not something we do in the South. I think we do it better in Texas. You say, this is what a therapist would say, make an I statement. When you do blah, 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 I feel, fill in the blank with a real feeling like mad, sad, glad, embarrassed. Not, I feel like there's something wrong with you. When you don't look up when I come in the room, I feel like you're mad at me, maybe. No, I'm not mad at you, I'm just reading. Like, okay. Okay, what are some other techniques people use for being difficult? One is not listening. They hear you making noises, but the words aren't sinking in because maybe their head is very noisy with some work they're doing or with something they're obsessed with, or maybe they're writing something inside their head, or maybe they can't hear you because of their head is screaming. Maybe they just got a bad diagnosis, or they're worried about a family member, or they're scared of something, and their brain is loud. When people are in grief, they get this kind of ADD where they have more fender benders and they can't really hear you, and they lock their keys in the refrigerator and whatever. So sometimes what a therapist would tell you, now I was a therapist for many years, so I know all the therapist stuff. It doesn't always work, but here it is for what it's worth. You say, let's stop for a minute and you repeat back to me what you're understanding that I'm saying to you, and then I'll tell you what I think you're saying to me. And it works a lot of the time. Then you can kind of get on common ground. Start from there. It doesn't always work, because I've had people who've said, yes, I understand what you're saying, and here's what I'm saying. Yes, you understand what I'm saying, okay. And then 2 days later, it seems to have gone somewhere else. That's okay. And I had a friend who said she and her husband didn't fight anymore. She said the marriage counselor just gave us so many rules for how to fight, it just got to be too much trouble. Now, some people are difficult because their head is full of assumptions about you. And you begin to understand that they're not really dealing with you, they're dealing with their idea of you. Some people, not saying it's anybody here, but long ago and far away, I've had people who assumed that a lesbian woman was lesbian and she hated men, which hurt my feelings as a mother of 2 wonderful sons. And it made me mad, because, And so you find yourself at a crossroads. Do I do some education here, or do I say this relationship isn't worth it? And those of us who are people of color have had this experience over and over again, where people look at us and make assumptions about us based on the color of our skin, or an accent we might have, or where they think we came from, or that they think we came from somewhere else and we're not real Americans, or it's just so frustrating that sometimes we want to gently educate, and other times we are just too tired and frustrated to gently educate. Plus, really, for the gay people and people of color, it is a life or death occurrence sometimes. You just never know when it's going to be a life or death occurrence. Somebody's assumption about you, that you're more dangerous or more violent or whatever. You all read the polls about the Republican Trump supporters in the summertime. Oh, they have terrible stereotypes about people of color. I'm not even going to mention what they are. They're just too painful. And what almost nobody else said was when the Democrats were polled, almost as many of them had the same stereotypes. It's deplorable on both sides. So when someone is looking at you because of your gender or your orientation, because of your color, because maybe something else, maybe you have a Southern accent and they think whoever has a Southern accent is stupid. Or maybe your teeth, you didn't get braces as a child, and so they assume that you're a hillbilly or whatever. Lots of people have dumb assumptions, and they just are unexamined. I worked in New Jersey for a long time, and sometimes I remembered to put my Philadelphia accent back on, but other times my Carolina came through, and people would actually say, until I met you, I really did think people who talk slowly were stupid. Where do you start with that? Thank you? I know you've been traveling and people have stereotypes about you because you're Texans. It's just very difficult to deal with sometimes. Some people are difficult for me, I'm moving on, because they're chaos people. Chaos people make themselves the center of something, some project, some working team, some home, and they make all their plans at the last minute. Their hair is always on fire. They're always just barely pulling it out. The people around them are running ragged, trying to figure out what's going on. They're the only one that has all the information. They're the only one who knows what the picture of this event is supposed to be. They're the only one who knows what their actual thoughts about foreign policy are, and their minions are trying to run around making policy from tweets, and they have to figure out. So when you have a chaos person, it's a very effective way to control everybody around you because nobody has the whole picture but you. Small scale to large scale, chaos works in a way. It works for the person who's controlling. Everybody else gets frazzled and burnt out. So you can try to avoid being on the team of a person who's chaos oriented, or you can try being their boss and giving them deadlines and stuff like that. Neither way is very pleasant. Or some people are being difficult by being what Julia Cameron, author of The Artist's Way, she called it wet blanket matadors. So you have an idea, but they're always like, oh, I don't think that'll work. We tried that 20 years ago in 1996, and it just didn't work at all. Oh no, that's going to make too many people mad. You can't do that. Wet blanket matadors, sometimes difficult for people. So I could go on and on about different kinds of being difficult because it's fun. But I want to talk instead about what people say to do for difficult people. How do you handle it? Well, a number of trainers in the business world say, fly like an eagle, just avoid them. I'm thinking, what? Sometimes you can avoid them, but sometimes they're like your mom. And sometimes they're your boss or your sister or your coworker, or it's very hard to avoid certain people who are difficult for you. So, but, as Michelle Obama said, when they go low, we go high, and sometimes you can fly like an eagle and just ignore the people that are stabbing you to death around your ankles. Many people are difficult because they're out of balance somehow. They grew up in an environment that was out of balance, and they had to become out of balance in order to adjust and survive in that environment. Not their fault. Still difficult. And some people are out of balance or maybe they're not. They just don't share your same values. Maybe they just disagree with you about certain things, and that's difficult. I know we've all been talking about, going home for Thanksgiving or meeting with sisters or cousins or aunts and uncles who have very different political views and how to respectfully have a dialogue. Well, one of my spiritual teachers is named Byron Katie. Some of you know her. And all the spiritual teachers say this very true but irritating thing, which is that difficult people are your teachers. They're put into your life because the Spirit is inviting you into learning about deeper love. Byron Katie has lots of videos online of her working with people. She has a series of questions that she asks people, 4 or 5 questions, and you work with a judge your neighbor worksheet. She says, people judge, human beings judge. Let's just fall in love with reality. People judge. I don't know where you got that mossy old idea that people shouldn't judge each other. Where's that from? You're on the planet Earth now, sweetheart. Make yourself at home. So she says on the Judge Your Neighbor worksheet, just let the barriers down and just be as judgmental as you want about somebody. Just say everything you want about them. Here's what they're like. Here's what I wish they would do. Here's what I would like the situation to be. Okay. So this week I watched a video of her working with a young woman who had trouble with her mother. So she has the young woman read from the paper. My mother is selfish, manipulating, controlling, and deceitful. And I wish she would just respect me for who I am and accept me for who I am. Katie said, okay. Is it true that your mother doesn't respect you? She said, yes, it's true. Are you sure? Why? I think so. She says, well, give me an example of how your mother tries to control you. The young woman thinks. She goes, I know, I've got one. I made a book of my values. It was called My Values, scrapbook. And I showed it to her and asked her what she thought. And she said she thought all my values were wrong. Katie goes, sweetheart, she's your mother. She thinks what she thinks about your values, and she thinks all your values are wrong. How does that control you? The woman's like, well, She said, now, let's read the rest. You wish she would respect you? She said, turn that around. Let's turn that around. The woman looked at that, and she goes, I think I should respect me? Katie's like, yeah. If you respected your values, your mom wouldn't be able to hurt you as much by not respecting your values. Do you respect your mother's values? Well, no, she's wrong. She's like, so let's turn that first part around. And the woman goes, I'm manipulative and controlling. Katie goes, yeah. Yeah, mothers and daughters, they try to control each other. That's how we do it. We're doing our job. We're doing our job. Let's get peaceful with it. Get peaceful with who your mother is. That's who she is. She's not going to change. This is who you are. You want to manipulate and control her into agreeing with your values, but all she did was tell you the truth. She thinks your values are wrong. That's not controlling, manipulative, deceitful. What do you want from her? I want her to be more like me. Yeah. Anyway, it was an interesting shift inside this young woman. And when you fall in love with reality, Byron Katie says, then you are less vulnerable to being hurt and controlled because you know what's coming. You are dealing with the mother you have versus the mother you wish you had. You're dealing with this mother, and she doesn't agree with you, and Katie always says, so the last part, you've made a vow, I never want to be controlled again. She said, let's just say, I look forward to being controlled again by my mother. I look forward to my mother being my mother again. See, that way you're all ready for it. You don't have that terrible disappointment. She's your mother. Anyway, here is the uncomfortable truth, I think, is that when you're dealing with difficult people, the best amount of control you have, the best amount of leverage you have is over you. And you can change you. And here are some ways of changing you. Okay, you can avoid them if you can. You can change the environment if you can, so that maybe you work in a different place or they work in a different place or whatever. You can do what the 12-step people call take your sails out of their wind. I don't know what that means in your situation, but if you ask yourself in that situation, what would it mean in this situation for me to take my sails out of their wind? I bet an answer would occur. You can do the loving kindness meditation, which the 12-step people call the resentment prayer. They stole it straight from the Buddhists, where you pray for the other person everything that you want for yourself, and it changes you. You do it every day for 14 days. It really works, so I wouldn't advise doing it if you want to hang on to a resentment. Pema Chodron, an excellent Buddhist teacher, says, take the target off your back. And what she means is, everybody else is so on fire with aggression. If you can practice meditation enough, be quiet enough inside, if you can become a person who doesn't get on fire with aggression as easily, the target will be off your back. I have seen this work, and I have seen it not work. Then there's asking yourself, why are they this way, and doing some research into their background to see if you can understand them, because they say understanding makes people less difficult, and I have seen that work once or twice too. And there's asking yourself if you're really sure that they are actually trying to drive you crazy. Because maybe they're not. Maybe they're just being who they are. And you can look forward to them always being who they are, and you can trust them to be who they are. The Chinese Book of Wisdom, the I Ching, says that a good character is formed over time. It starts as a little spiral and turns into a strong circle. My good character, I build it day by day. I can't suddenly call on a good character if I have somebody difficult I'm dealing with. I have to practice, I have to be wise, I have to become what they call hard on the inside and soft on the outside, which I think is so interesting from the other side of the world, because normally we like to say people are mushy on the inside and hard on the outside, and that's endearing to us. And yet I understand the appeal of wanting to be hard on the inside, like these are my values, this is who I am, this is my steadiness, this is my rootedness. And I can be soft and malleable on the outside, but there will come a point where I will need that structure of my good character on the inside. Because having a good character, having a spiritual path, all of that is for one purpose: to know more and more clearly what the next right thing to do is. That's all. May it be so for us, and may we accept the universe's invitation to us to grow in love.